that Justin Baldoni is harassing her. She was playing the young version of Blake. Isabela, I don't understand what you're doing here and throwing and just supporting this Justin's her harasser narrative, and now you're doubling down. This is such a...
Isabela Ferrer's courtroom position has raised serious questions and sparked intense debate. Was she telling the truth, or is this just another Hollywood power struggle playing out behind closed doors? Text records show Ferrer once praised Justin Baldoni, describing him as safe and wonderful, which directly clashes with the current narrative coming from Blake Lively's camp, where Ferrer is now portrayed as complicit in alleged misconduct. This sharp contradiction has left many observers confused and stunned. How did Ferrer go from openly admiring Baldoni's character to standing against him in court? That sudden shift is at the center of the controversy, and in a moment, I'll reveal the legal filing that completely flips this story on its head.
Right thing and tell what happened. At this point, you've now aggravated the fan base that you're afraid of, and I could see why you might be afraid of, because no one's going to believe you. And there is a part of me that's like, I hope nothing did happen, because no one's going to believe you. And I see that problem. That's why I think she's in a possible situation. There are so many people in this Justice for Justin camp, they're not going to believe even if something went bad. Now, I don't think anything went bad. I don't think it's possible anything went bad that was so deemed of all this to blow up the way it did. But there is a version of this where she may have actually, looked back and go, you know what? I wish he hadn't have said that. Or, I didn't like that. Does that mean she wanted to drag this into the lawsuit like Blake did? Hell no. So I can see why she might be conflicted potentially. But did you tell Justin you were uncomfortable? That's the other problem. Just like Blake didn't mention it during the dance sequence, if she really was. Communication is key. And the reality is, in my opinion, I don't understand what could have happened to warrant what this is blown up to. And for that reason alone, Isabela, I don't understand what you're doing here and throwing and just supporting this Justin's her harasser narrative, and now you're doubling down. This is such a...
What if the very first piece of evidence, brushed off as harmless small talk, turns out to be the most damaging weapon in the entire case? At a glance, Isabela Ferrer's texts to Justin Baldoni seem innocent, even complimentary. She describes him as thoughtful, intelligent, and supportive, the kind of language that presents him as a safe and trusted figure in Hollywood. In an industry where polite praise is often routine, those messages initially looked like standard professional courtesy. But on closer inspection, they cut much deeper. While Ferrer was privately expressing comfort and admiration, Blake Lively's team was publicly advancing a very different narrative, one suggesting Ferrer felt uneasy, pressured, and wary under Baldoni's direction. That's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. How can warm, upbeat messages about feeling safe coexist with court filings that imply distrust and fear? These two versions of events involve the same people, yet they cannot logically exist side by side. And now, that tension between friendly private texts and hostile legal claims threatens to unravel Blake's carefully constructed case. Imagine sitting in a courtroom while your own cheerful words, full of appreciation and ease, are read aloud, all while your side insists you felt manipulated or unsafe. The emotional tone simply doesn't match. If someone truly felt threatened, would their messages be light and admiring or cautious and distant? Those texts don't just weaken Blake's narrative, they directly challenge it. Hollywood, however, is never simple, and neither are its power dynamics. Compliments in this industry are not always sincere. They can be survival tools. Rising figures like Isabela Ferrer often feel intense pressure to stay in everyone's good graces, and a warm text doesn't always reflect genuine comfort. Sometimes it's the professional equivalent of a polite smile at a party you're desperate to leave early. But when those survival gestures become legal evidence, the line between sincerity and strategy begins to blur, often with explosive consequences. History is filled with celebrity disputes derailed by private messages that contradicted public claims. Texts once dismissed as trivial later dismantled entire legal narratives. That's why Ferrer's words carry so much weight now. Were her glowing messages to Justin Baldoni honest praise, or carefully calculated diplomacy to protect herself? Did she knowingly allow her name to be used in filings that told a very different story? Or was she pulled into a battle far bigger than she ever expected? With every screenshot that surfaces, the uncertainty deepens, and the gap between those messages and Blake Lively's narrative grows harder to explain. And this may only be the beginning, because buried inside Blake's own filings is a strange mistake, a revealing slip that could expose just how much control her team exercised over the story. If simple compliments are already shaking the foundation of the case, that single error could prove explosive. The question is no longer whether these texts matter, it's how much damage they will cause once the full picture finally comes into focus.
Young version of Blake, they were all over each other during the promotion. They were doing slumber parties. Suddenly Taylor Swift she was meeting Taylor and basically getting loved bomb, it seemed, by Blake and Ryan. And honestly, I could see why Isabela chose them, because they're a big, powerful couple. Honestly, they could have destroyed her career if they wanted to, as they're starting to prove, right? So Isabela chose the big, fancy couple, and sadly, seemingly shunned Justin, which is what he alleged. And it's also in this thing. And so that's why Justin wanted to subpoena her to get these text messages and figure out, did you ever complain? Were you told to shun me? What kind of stuff might there be? And the only thing we've seen is his response to Blake's inappropriate allegations, where Isabela said, you are a wonderful, smart, sincere director who created such a comfortable, safe space for me. I feel like I could step into this role. I couldn't have asked for a more welcoming environment. And he said, oh my gosh, thank you. You were a pleasure. This is what we have to base it off of, though. Now, this text exchange was brought in by Justin.
The story takes a sharp turn from intriguing to downright bizarre. Buried deep inside one of the legal filings connected to Blake Lively's camp, readers noticed a strange reference that had nothing to do with the case itself. Instead of naming Justin Baldoni or his legal representatives, the document unexpectedly mentioned the Wayfair team. Yes, Wayfair, the online furniture retailer. The reaction was immediate and explosive. How could a high-profile Hollywood legal filing accidentally name-drop a shopping website instead of the central party in the dispute? For a legal team known for precision and polish, the mistake felt shockingly careless. Speculations spread fast. Was it simply a late-night typo or something far more revealing? While errors do happen and lawyers work under intense pressure, this one didn't feel like a harmless oversight. The wording was oddly specific, so out of place that it resembled a fingerprint, hinting at who may have actually shaped the narrative. That suspicion fueled the next wave of debate. Was this document truly authored solely by her legal team, or had Blake's PR handlers influenced it first, blurring the line between courtroom evidence and media spin? Social media erupted as fans and insiders dissected the language, many arguing that it read less like a legal filing and more like recycled publicity copy. And there's precedent for this. In past celebrity disputes, unusual phrasing in court documents has often exposed who was really controlling the story. Language that sounds tabloid-ready rather than legally precise is rarely accidental. It usually signals that publicists, not just lawyers, are steering the narrative, even inside documents meant for the courtroom. That's why the Wayfair mention matters. On the surface, it looks like nothing more than a typo, but beneath that, it almost functions as evidence on its own. Instead of weakening Justin Baldoni's position, the slip redirected scrutiny straight back at Blake Lively's camp, like accusing someone else of vanity while accidentally snapping a selfie. In gossip terms, it was the equivalent of leaking your own text thread while trying to prove you'd been ignored. The attempt to control the narrative suddenly became visible, and once people noticed the seams, they couldn't unsee them. What began as a strange clerical error started to resemble a calculated move that went badly wrong. Baldoni didn't overlook it. He responded forcefully, issuing a subpoena designed to uncover just how much behind-the-scenes narrative shaping had been taking place all along.
Isabela's lawyers are trying to paint that more nefariously. They're saying that but at this point, they're calling it the Baldoni team, even though it's the Wayfair team. They're doing that on purpose. There's so many fingerprints here from Blake Lively. It's so obvious from my perspective. Ron's as well, and others I'm going to show you. But this is crazily, seemingly written by Blake's team because it's so anti-Justin in a way that's just we've never heard this from her. And at first when I read this, I was kind of like, well, wait, what does this mean? But let's break down some of the problems that Isabella is now going to face. Because look, she's trying to make it clear that now, not then, Baldoni has tried to manipulate, threaten, control, and otherwise act inappropriately towards Miss Ferreira. Because of the subpoena? Because of the subpoena and because of an indemnification clause, which we're going to get to in a second. But this is absolutely bonkers. Now, as we get to this, I want to throw this first point in too. She makes it clear, look, I was on this film for 4 days. I didn't get paid a lot. I wasn't involved with a lot of this, but now I'm being pulled in by Baldoni. Well, you actually were pulled in by Blake. Let's just make sure that's correct. I'm going to correct it every time. The complaint that Baldoni filed in response to Lively, not against her, in response to Lively, makes 4 direct references, including a few text messages. Some, not surprisingly, some of the text messages she sent to Baldoni were very positive. Well, why is that not surprising? Because he's a good guy. Included the types of comments one would expect from a young actress to make to the director and producer of her first feature film. So this is typical for her to lie? Is that what you're saying? And all actresses lie? I don't know, man. If I didn't have a safe time on a set, I don't think I would want to text that director how safe of an experience I had. Now, I may say, thanks so much for the experience. I had a great time. I might do something like that, but to be so specific.
Why would Justin Baldoni push so aggressively for more of Isabela Ferrer's text messages when the ones already made public seemed to portray him as supportive, safe, and even admired? That was the question everyone asked when news of his subpoena surfaced. A subpoena isn't a casual request. It's a binding legal order that forces specific materials into the open. In this case, Baldoni wasn't interested in a handful of flattering quotes. He wanted Ferrer's private communications in full. Every message, every exchange, every possible detail hidden inside her phone. On the surface, it looked like a direct counterstrike against Blake Lively's carefully constructed narrative. If Ferrer's filings suggested she felt pressured, uneasy, or uncomfortable, then presenting her entire unedited message history before a judge could completely dismantle that framing. Selecting a few positive lines is one thing, but exposing hundreds of raw conversations spanning months is another. That kind of evidence doesn't bend. It either confirms the story or destroys it. And subpoenas come with collateral damage. They don't just pull one person into the legal fight. They drag in everyone connected through calls and texts, turning private conversations into potential courtroom exhibits. For Ferrer, that shift was terrifying. Compliance wasn't optional. Ignoring a subpoena could mean contempt of court, fines, sanctions, or even being forced to testify under oath. For a young actress still building her career, the stakes couldn't be higher. In Hollywood, reputation matters just as much as talent, and once private messages enter the legal system, there's no taking them back. Refusing to comply doesn't just irritate judges, it brands you as evasive. Once industry whispers start suggesting you're difficult or hiding something, casting opportunities can disappear before you ever get the chance to defend yourself. That is the brutal dilemma facing Isabela Ferrer. Full cooperation risks exposing messages that may suggest she wasn't entirely honest about her comfort level, or worse, that she was being guided or influenced by someone else's camp. Resistance, on the other hand, makes her appear as if she's shielding Blake and Ryan's influence, locking her into the role of an accessory in a war she never asked to fight. Either way, she's trapped in a chess match written by others, with her own reputation as the collateral. That's why speculation intensified. What if Baldoni believed the unseen texts didn't just reflect positively on him, but also revealed pressure from Blake's inner circle to stick to a specific narrative? In that context, the subpoena stopped looking like simple self-protection and started resembling a strategic weapon, one designed to expose manipulation and force Blake's team into a defensive position. Instead of relying on vague filings and carefully crafted leaks, the court could soon be staring at first-hand proof of whether Ferrer was persuaded, pressured, or simply conflicted. The subpoena shifted from standard legal procedure to a hammer blow, directly challenging the version of events Blake's side had worked to preserve. And in Hollywood's high-stakes legal battles, aggressive moves like this almost always signal another layer at play: quiet contractual pressure and calculated timing designed to shape outcomes long before the public understands what's really unfolding.